Hey everybody, welcome back to Screwball, a baseball podcast, your home for everything baseball. I'm your host Mike Lepre, here with my co-host Frank White.
Hey, how's it going?
Now on this episode, and for the next few episodes, we're going to shift a little over to fantasy baseball, specifically our fantasy league, our fantasy picks, and who we think is going to be most valuable to our respective teams. We're going to go around the diamond a few episodes and talk about each position, who we think is the most valuable player at each position for us to draft. Actually, the top 5 players we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some sleeper picks we want, who we think in the long run could be more valuable, who we think could be more valuable in the short term, who we think we might want to pick up later in the year, stuff like that. Just general fantasy stuff. So for this episode, we're going to go around the diamond almost numerically, so it made sense for us to start with the pitchers and catchers. So we're going to start with starting pitchers, then we're going to move to relievers and closers, and we're going to finish with catchers. So why don't you start us off, Frank, by talking about some of your most desired starters in fantasy?
Sure. So, and some of these, our list is a little weird for starting pitchers, I think, because I know my list and I believe Mike's list, we kind of left off some of the top guys, just because obviously, everyone didn't draft them. They're all going to get drafted. They're all going to get drafted high. So we kind of left them off the list just because first 5, 6 guys on our list would have been all the same if we would have did that. So we kind of left them off, and the way that me and Mike draft our teams, it kind of doesn't really leave us too much choice to get a bunch of those top guys either. It's not going to be exactly who we want in those orders, but these are just some names that we're going to look at these positions to try drafting, or that if they're there in a reasonable round, we will draft. So to start with the start pitchers for me, the first guy probably be Aaron Nola. 2 years ago, he had a really good year. Last year, had a tough first half, but bounced back second half. So just a young guy with super talent. Chris Paddock, another guy I'm looking at. Had a really good year last year. Tyler Glasnow, because he's the man. I had him last year. I drafted him, I believe, the second to last round in the whole draft. I got him, and without an injury, he would have been in the Cy Young chase. Max Fried, because young lefty, big lefty, plays with a great team, so gonna get a bunch of runs. Sonny Gray, another pitcher who playing with a good team with the Reds, had a great year last year, so another guy is just gonna put up consistent numbers, 6 innings or so every outing. Jose Barrios, another really good young pitcher, plays with the Twins, another guy who's gonna play with a really good lineup. Also, he's a guy who pitches deep into games all the time.
Yeah.
Even if he gets beat up, even if he gives up 5 runs, he's still pitching 5 innings, 6 innings.
Yeah.
So that's always nice. There's another guy that's this one's probably surprising to some people, but Yu Darvish. I had him last year at the beginning of the year. I ended up trading him, but beginning of the year he was coming back from injuries and he was wild. But really the second half of the year he really lowered his walk totals, and he really had a good year. Kind of just pick up where he left off and have just that low walks and really pitch well. He can definitely put up some good numbers with a Cubs team. Especially, he's got to get a little bit of luck and see where the wind's blowing out there in Chicago.
Yeah, for sure.
Another guy is Brandon Woodruff with the Brewers. He had a really good year last year. He's their ace. Dallas Keuchel for the White Sox. He had a really good year last year. He was starting late. He was like in the mid 3s. Ground ball pitcher with a White Sox team that's going to be it's going to be a solid team. With another one, it's going to get a little bit of luck to see where the wind's blowing on his starts. Wind's blowing out might hurt him a little bit, but overall, he should have a pretty good year. And this last guy in my top 10, which is definitely got to be a surprise to some people, is John Means from Baltimore.
Yep.
The guy who pitched in a tough division last year in the AL East.
Sure did.
She gets the Yankees and Boston and teams like that, and he still had like a 3.5, 3.6 ERA. So, and it was his first year. So he's a guy who I think can continue to grow, and he's definitely a guy that I'm keeping an eye on, especially matters where he's available at. It makes sense, and I'll definitely take a look at him. And some sleeper pitchers that guys who are going to get drafted later in the draft, or might not even get drafted, who are gonna, I think, could have really good years, fantasy wise at least. Lance Lynn, older veteran, had a good year last year. John Gray, of course, I like John Gray, so I always keep an eye on him. He's also got super talent.
Yeah.
Dylan Bundy, getting out of Baltimore, getting out of the AL East, getting to the Angels with a good team, might be a bounce back candidate. Lance McCullers, always liked him. He's come back from injuries.
Mm-hmm.
I always kind of liked him, especially with that curveball he can throw anytime he wants.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a big one here was Kyle Freeland for the Rockies. 2 years ago, he had a really good year. He was in the NL Cy Young race.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, he never pitched good at all. He got beat up every inning, every time out. It was bad.
Yeah.
But if he can get back to what he was 2 years ago, or even close, he's a guy who's going to put up some good numbers. That's pretty much where I got some of these starting pitchers. Is some of the names that I'm looking at, minus some of the top guys like Garrett Cole and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. There's some similarities there, but there's so many starting pitchers out there for us to draft. I mean, it's just, like you said, I tried to avoid the DeGroms and the Coles and the Sale if he was pitching, the Scherzers, the Strasburgs. I like to avoid putting them on my list because I don't draft. I know you don't do it as extreme as I do. I know you take a few rounds before you draft a pitcher. Well, most people do. But I almost take it to the extreme. I don't draft a guy until like the 4th or 5th round. So I usually, by the time I'm drafting a pitcher, I'm getting like the number 2 guy or the number 3 guy or whatever. Unless, low hanging fruit, I could just draft someone, real quick, get like a really good number 1 starter. But my list, I think because there's so many starting pitchers that I really like, I think I might even be able to land some of these top guys this year. So the first guy I want to talk about is Blake Snell, who has become, first of all, he's an amazing pitcher, and he's going to put up great numbers, I think, that this year. Kind of a little bit of a bounce back candidate, I guess you could say. He's really become a big star in the game, I guess you could say, off the field, especially with all this stuff going on with the Players League and MLB and stuff. I like Blake Snell. I just like the person, and I think he's going to do me well in fantasy if I can get him. Next, I want to talk about Luis Castillo for the Reds. He had a great year last year, and I think that he can do even better this year with a improved Reds team, get some nice run support, got a good pitching staff over there. I think he's going to do just fine. Lucas Giolito, another guy kind of similar to Blake Snell, was kind of prevalent in that Players League, has kind of become a little bit of a fan favorite maybe with some people. There's definitely a guy like Luis Castillo going to get some more run support with the White Sox, the improved lineup there, even though it was already a pretty potent lineup. So he's going to do good too. Like you had on your list, I got Tyler Glasnow next. He's got really good stuff. Like you said, he could. I had him on my list for some Cy Young awards, maybe a dark horse for Cy Young awards, strikeout awards, stuff like that. Next on my list, I got Corey Kluber. I want to look at. Kluber has had some years that are questionable, some health injuries, stuff like that, health problems, excuse me. But he's still one of the top guys when he's pitching, he's healthy, and when he's right, he could be one of the top guys. So he's someone to look at, maybe a little further down the list, as the draft goes on. Next, like you, I got Sonny Gray. I had Sonny Gray last season. I knew coming out of the Yankees, I knew that he'd be good with the Reds. It was just how it's got to go. He was really bad with the Yankees, but he did great last year, and I think he could even do better if he starts going a little deeper in games. Next, I got Mike Soroka for the Braves. I think he's one of their best starters, if not the best, and I think that he's going to do really good next year. After that, I got James Paxton for the Yankees. It's just, even if his ERA is a little high, which it very well could be, he's going to have a lot of strikeouts, and he's going to get a lot of wins with that Yankee lineup. I mean, that's no question there. I've talked about him in the past. My next guy is Sean Manaea. I like him a lot. Big, tall lefty for the A's. He's going to probably put up really good numbers. He finished the year last year unbelievably. If he can carry that into this season, it'd be fantastic. I expect to hopefully get him towards the end of towards the lower half of the draft, maybe. And then number 10, I threw in Madison Bumgarner. A little change of scenery going to the Diamondbacks. He's definitely not what he once was, but he's still out there. He's still good. He can still put up good numbers. I'm pretty confident that if I got him, I would. He's still very valuable in fantasy. And then some sleepers. I got the top sleeper that I'm looking at. I know me and you both like him. Lance McCullers. We got hurt. He's going to come back, and that Astros team is that lineup's ridiculous. So he's going to definitely get his fair share of wins. that rotation is already good, and I think that he can shine now in that rotation with Verlander and Greinke. Next, one of my sleepers, I got Marcus Stroman. He's not, I wouldn't necessarily call him like a real sleeper because people know about him and he's got a big personality. But he's some guy that he's consistent in that he's going to be consistent in that Mets rotation. He's going to put up good stats. And I think he could be big for that team. So I'm looking at him maybe a little lower in the draft. Chris Bassett for the A's. Like I actually have written here, he's not overwhelming. He's not going to go out there and be your number one guy, but a guy that you can draft on your team and feel pretty comfortable when he starts. And then my next guy, I got Michael Wacha, who I am pretty confident in could make that number 5 starting, be the number 5 starter for the Mets, and I think he's going to do just fine. Again, kind of similar to a Chris Bassett. I feel like you can draft him, a low risk guy, and he could put up some pretty good numbers for you. Maybe get some quality starts, some strikeouts, and you're on your way. So those are my top guys, some of my sleepers. I know there's some similarities there, but we got some differences too. Obviously other than your best guys in the league, your Garrett Coles and stuff like that. Do you have anything else on any starters or any other guys you want to mention, or you want to just move on to relievers?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. Starting pitchers is a lot of them. You can kind of get starting pitchers whenever. And, like I said, we left out some of the big names because obviously they're going to get drafted. Everyone knows about them, so there's no point of putting 6 or 7 of our spots on here filled up with guys that everyone already knows about. Everyone's going to draft early. But there's definitely a bunch of other pitchers on there, I could think of. But, these are definitely some of the names I'll be looking at when the draft kind of rolls through, and take a look at them. And if it makes sense, I'll draft them. But I'm not going to draft them. I'm not going to go crazy and go reaching for them,
Yeah, like the first two picks, you're trying to get Garrett Cole or something, that's not usually how we draft. Me and you, at least.
Yeah. I think next we can go to relief pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
And this is combined. This can be closers, relievers, setup men, closers, whoever. So I kind of tried to avoid some of the names that Mike's mentioned in the past. Our list combined should hit about a bunch of the top guys as well. So I'll start off with Roberto Ozuna for the Astros. Obviously, a young pitcher, good, high velocity. Just a team that's got a lot of talent. So they should be in a lot of close games. So you should have a chance at a good amount of saves.
Yeah.
Next, I have Liam Hendricks, a guy that I really liked in the last 2 years. Another team with the A's who seems to always be winning games and always playing close games, win or lose. So he should be in a lot of games, even getting 4 or 5 out saves too. And the next guy, Kenley Jensen, even though he's been having some injuries and velocity coming down a little bit, he's still on a team, again, that's going to have a lot of wins, so he should be have a lot of chances of getting saves.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Colomé is my next guy for the White Sox.
Mm-hmm.
I had him years ago. He was with the Rays as a closer, and I loved him then. He just gets the job done. As simple as that. That's the only thing I can say with him. He just gets the job done. He's just going to keep getting saves.
Yeah.
So with an improved White Sox team, his number should shoot up even farther.
Definitely.
Next guy on my list is Rafael Iglesias.
Okay.
Been with the Reds for a few years now. He's been the closer. They use him a little weird because he kind of 2 innings, 5 outs a lot. He gets a lot of innings. Sometimes it hurts his ERA a little bit, but he does end up with 30 or so saves.
Yeah.
So, and the Reds are a good team, so he should get a lot of chances there.
The
next guy is Giovanni Gallegos, the Cardinals. Last year he pitched great. He was unbelievable. He wasn't the closer for the most part, but he's a guy who's, I don't know if he's going to be the closer this year either, but he's definitely going to get probably some chances at it. Either way, he's going to get a bunch of holes, a bunch of innings, could get some saves, whatever they use him as. He's a good reliever, young guy, throws hard. Next guy is similar, Emilio Pagan. Emilio Pagan was with the Rays. He got traded to the Padres. He's going to be the setup man for Yates. If anything happens to Yates, he'll be the first guy to step in. He's had some couple good years in a row. It's weird because I think this is his 4th year, and this is like his 4th team or something like that. He's never been on the same team consecutive years.
Yeah,
Not sure
weird.
why, because he's had a really good, start of his career.
Mm.
Next guy, Scott Oberg, or Oberg, however they, want to pronounce it.
Mm.
Filled in for the Wade Davis last year when Wade Davis exploded.
Yeah.
He was on my fantasy team, so I've seen that. But he took over well for Wade Davis. Got some saves. He got holds throughout the year, so he's another one that's going to have a good chance at having a good year in any role he fills. Next is Seth Lugo, guy who's probably going to be a setup man, a guy who's going to be essentially a fireman. He's going to come in and put out the fires. It might be the fifth inning, it might be the eighth inning, it might be the ninth inning, who knows? But he's going to get a lot of innings. He's going to get a lot of strikeouts, holds, wins, stuff like that. He should be in line for a bunch of those. Next guy is very similar, Chad Green with the Yankees. It could be an opener, it could be fill-in closer, it could be getting holds. He could do everything. So this guy's going to attack up a bunch of stats. And then a few sleepers. I got Ryan Presley for the Astros. Had a really good year last year. Then he had a foot injury, kind of started making him struggle a little bit. But he's a guy who's going to get a bunch of holds. Could even get saves if something happens to Ozuna. The next guy is definitely your sleeper type, and that's Hunter Harvey. He's a guy they drafted a couple years ago. He's like the number 1 overall pick or first round pick for them early on, and he's never really done anything so far. They still think he could be a starter, but they're saying that he's probably going to be a reliever, and he's going to have a good chance at even starting the year as their closer.
Okay.
So the guy could definitely have some good stuff and have a good year on a team that's really not going to be that great, but still put up some good numbers. Shane Green's the next guy. Obviously had him last year. Detroit, yeah, he went to the Braves, still pitched well at the Braves, so he's going to get saves, could get holds, whatever, but, a guy that's no one really talks about year in, year out. Ken Giles had a really good year last year. No one really talks about him at all, so it's just a guy that kind of go under the radar, especially with the Blue Jays offense probably being better this year and getting a little bit more pieces. Team might be able to get a couple more wins, gives them a couple more chances at some saves. And the last sleeper I got here is Will Harris, former Astros with the Nationals now. He had like a 1.5 ERA last year. Just a setup man. Gets a bunch of holds, gets innings, gets some strikeouts. He's going to get you a bunch of holds. So if you're a fantasy league like ours who has holds, he's one of the top guys you want to get. So.
Yeah, again, some similarities there for sure. I mean, we definitely think along the same lines. I mean, there's none of those. I don't think there's really anyone on that list that I would not consider drafting. They're all good. Even the sleepers, I mean, they're all, you want to definitely consider them. So for relievers, I included some of the top guys, a little different from starters because I tend to at least get one of the big relievers, at least just to have that one real dominant saves guy. Last year I had Kirby Yates, and that was just, and the year before that I had Blake Trine, and it was just unbelievable. You can just leave him in your lineup and he's going to get a save, and that's it. No runs given up, and just goes about his business. So my number one guy that I want to that I would look at drafting is Aroldis Chapman. Arguably one of, if not the best reliever in the league, pretty consistently. On the Yankees, going to get his saves, going to have his numbers. You can see the numbers maybe go up a little bit this year because his velocity's dropping a little bit. So it's definitely something to watch, but I still think he's going to be just fine. Right after that, Kirby Yates, another top guy, pitched unbelievably last season. He may not pitch quite like that this season, but I mean, I wouldn't put it past him to have quite around a 2.5 ERA. Then after that, another really, one of the top guys, Josh Hader, another guy who's just dominant, going to do just fine, going to get his opportunities with the Brewers, I'm sure. Next guy after that I got is Brad Hand. He's going to definitely get his saves, but you got to be a little careful with him. You don't know where he might be ending up by the end of the season, but it's also just such a unique season that we've probably got coming up that who knows if he'll get moved or when, or who knows what's going to happen with that. But it's just something to note under normal circumstances. After that, I got Craig Kimbrell. I know we both like him. He's definitely going to have I would assume he's going to have a bounce back year because he had a rough year last year. Hard for him to really get going. He's still, one of the best relievers of the last 10 years or so. He's going to do just fine. Next, Taylor Rogers over there closing games. He's going to do just fine with the Twins. He's going to have his opportunities for sure, especially with that lineup. I mean, they're going to score their runs and they're going to be in games. After that, I got Sean Doolittle. Another consistent guy. He's not super, super dominant. Like he doesn't strike me as the guy, up there with Aroldis Chapman, Kirby Yates, and Josh Hader by any means. But he's a guy you could draft him. You could probably set him and forget him. He's going to be good. Will Smith next is another reliever that I'm looking at. He always puts up good numbers. He's going to get you some good stats. After that, Adam Ottavino over there with the Yankees. He's going to get you holds, and he's got really wicked stuff, so he's going to get a lot of strikeouts, I'm sure. Another guy I had last year. And finally, for my top 10 guys, I got Betances over with the Mets. He could easily be their best reliever this year. He's got some awesome stuff. He's coming off an injury, though, so you got to be careful. So those are my top 10 guys and some sleepers that I got. The first guy, kind of similar to one of my guys with the starting pitching. I got Edwin Diaz. The only reason I guess I would consider him a little bit more of a sleeper is because a lot of fantasy guys are going to avoid him like the plague based on the season he had last season, but I am really confident that he's going to have a bounce back year. And I've been saying this all year. He could always have a worse year, but with his stuff, I just don't see him having a worse year than he did last year. After that, I got a guy over at the Rays, Diego Castillo. He's got some crazy wicked stuff. I mean, you just watch him pitch. If he could bring some of that stuff under control and he could really get that two-seam going, oh, man, he's going to be really good. So I'm looking at him.
Yeah, him and Jose Alvarado, they go hand in hand over there with the Rays.
Yeah, the Rays got a ridiculous bullpen. I mean, they're probably the most underrated bullpen in the league, I would say.
They have Nick Anderson as well.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't even mentioned.
No, I don't have him on my list here, so good shout out for that. There's a lot of guys in that bullpen you could draft. Oliver Drake, another underrated guy, has really good stuff. Looking at him. Keep an eye on him. Veteran guy, Sergio Romo with the Twins. Another guy kind of similar to, like I said, he'll get his opportunities. He's not gonna set the world on fire or anything, but or they're not even sure really if he's gonna be the holds guy. But if he is that holds guy, I'm sure he'll do fine. Someone to maybe watch later in the draft. And similar to your last sleeper, I got Will Harris as well. He's gonna do just fine. I had him last season. He helped me out quite a bit, and I expect him to do just fine. I believe he's over with the Nats now, right? That's where he got signed? Yeah, He's going to do just fine over there. Definitely bolstered that bullpen. They needed it. Then there's a bunch of relievers out there. We tried to cover a few of those setup guys because holds are important in the league. Obviously the saves, getting one or two real big closers that can get you a bunch of saves is big too. But is there anyone else you want to mention real quick before we move on to our next group of guys?
I think you can even mention maybe Jordan Hicks, the Cardinals, coming off of Tommy John, but with the season being pushed back, they said he could be back in July or even August. So he might not miss much of the season at all.
At this point now,
103 miles per hour, and guy who has some super talent. So might be a guy to look at. John Gant as well for the Cardinals. They got some pieces out there in that bullpen, like the Gallegos, who are going to be good. So there's relievers everywhere. I mean, you got Zach Britton. I mean, Matt Barnes from Boston. I mean, there's relievers everywhere. That's similar as the starting pitchers. I mean, you can kind of pick up pitching all year long and really make do with the free agency.
Yeah.
But if you mix our lists together for relief pitchers, we kind of hit just about all the top guys, and we hit a few of the setup guys or guys that you might not really think of, off the top of your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
So getting off of pitchers, go hand in hand with the pitchers, though, is the catchers.
Yep.
Here's, I would say, probably the hardest position in fantasy to really build on or to really, get consistent numbers from. There's only a few guys that you could draft at catcher, and you're like, okay, I'm good there. Especially every year, more and more teams seem to be going with 2 or 3 catchers.
Yeah.
Not like one starter, just like one full-time starter. So it's kind of hard to get that fantasy guy. But my list starts off with really the best catcher in baseball right now, and that's Realmuto.
Yep.
I think it's his contract year, so you can even expect him to even have a better year. New coach Girardi, that should help him. Former catcher, so that can even make him better. He steals some bases, hits home runs, a lot of doubles, RBIs, good lineup. So he's gonna have a monster year. The second guy, which is a guy that I always kind of was like, weird about drafting, but I mean, he always does put up numbers, so it's hard to turn him down. It's just Monty Grandal, switch hitter with a bunch of power. add to the White Sox lineup, which is really good. I always just was 50-50 with him, but I mean, if you always look at his numbers every year, he ends up with good numbers. So especially at that position, it's going to be hard to pass him up.
Agreed.
The third guy, I think, third guy on my list at least, I have is Will Smith for the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
Young guy,
Okay.
came up last year, played really well, one of their higher prospects, super lineup. I mean, he could be batting eighth on that team, seventh on that team.
Yeah.
Guy that could easily be batting fifth, second, something like that in the lineup. And the next guy on my list is just superhuman because I had him last year. I picked him up to start the year, and he was literally it was just the reason my team was so good was Omar Narvaez.
Yeah.
What a fantastic year he had. No one even cared. No one even knows who he is.
I know.
Out there playing with the Mariners, hitting like 25 bombs. Batting like 290, hitting against lefties and everything. He had a really good year. And now he's going with the Brewers, a better lineup, and then obviously an easier ballpark to hit in the Brewers. He hit a fly ball to home run compared to Seattle. His numbers should even go up, but he had a great year last year. No one really even talks about him, but I had him, and he was like saving grace on my team last year. The next guy on my list is somebody I think everybody likes, and that's Yadier Molina. Don't really got to go into much of that. He's probably the best defensive catcher of all time. That's pretty much it. You don't worry about that. And offensively, he still holds his own, 270,
Yeah.
And then some sleepers I got Danny Jansen for the Blue Jays.
Okay.
Kind of looked at him last year, had him for a little while. He definitely struggled last year. He's definitely a really good defender. He was kind of learning the major leagues last year, learning how to catch some of his pitchers. So I think that kind of took a toll on his offense.
Mm-hmm.
But as the season went on, his offense started to get better. So you can see that he has a chance to be good there. So he's definitely a guy to take a look at. The next one is Roberto Perez, Cleveland. Lineup that's got some good power in it and some good names in it. He doesn't really hit for a high average, but he's going to hit 20-something home runs and bet you 240 maybe.
Yeah.
So definitely, if that's your catcher, I mean, that's fine. He's going to play just about every day too.
Yeah.
The next guy I want to talk about is he had another guy had a really good year. No one really mentions as Carson Kelly.
Yeah.
He was in the Goldschmidt trade, top prospect from the Cardinals a couple years ago. Obviously, he was just stalemate with Molina there. He had no chance to play. I believe he's only 25 years old now. Last year, he had a really good year, a bunch of home runs. He was batting, I think he ended up batting like 260 or 270. So he had a really good year. He had a bunch of home runs. So he's just going to do that again. Young guy who's just really has a chance to even keep growing. I mean, he's just definitely a guy who you could probably get late in fantasy drafts and really not have to worry about catchers. So that's definitely a guy to circle on, I think, everybody's list. The next one I want to talk about is Wilson Ramos. He puts the catcher's gear on and sits behind the plate, but he's not much of a catcher. It's just how it is. I'm not going to lie to you. He's really not a good defender. Not going to throw anybody out. But he hits. He hits. He's a really good offensive player. Really, he should be DHing somewhere. But fantasy-wise, he's going to put up numbers. Defensively, not great. He's okay. But offensively, he's going to hit a bunch of home runs and hit for a pretty high average as a catcher. And the last guy is a former top prospect, is Francisco Mejia for the Padres. And simply it. He was a former top prospect, switch hitter. Padres up and coming team. He's got a little bit of speed, so he's got a chance to be, a really good bat out there for the Padres. And someone I think could maybe turn into Wilson Contreras at some point. I really think that he could really make that comparison at some point. He's just got to get there. Defense is pretty close could be pretty close to Contreras. He's got a pretty strong arm. Definitely needs some work on that though. But offensively, he could definitely start putting up some numbers and really, show why he was a top prospect.
Yeah, like you said, with the catchers, it's tough in fantasy. It's not a super deep position with, like you said, teams kind of go into more a platoon role with the catchers. Catchers, even if they're real good hitters, they're going to shift away from that catching position, so they're not going to be catching for long. So catching is always, for me personally, it's always one of those positions I prioritize first, because if you start to fall in the draft, you go, oh, I need a catcher, and all of a sudden you look and you've got, you got guys that are batting 240, 250.
Yeah, and getting 150 at bats the whole year.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to get a guy that you can just put in your lineup and just kind of not worry about him not starting.
Yeah, you're gonna get, you want to get a catcher that's gonna play, you know, 5 out of the 7 days. That's what you really look for.
Yeah, and in that
And
same breath, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you can even try getting, one of these higher up catchers, and then get a sleeper catcher, someone who could be as your utility player and a backup catcher.
Yeah,
So it's just the catching position so hard, and it's like the hardest position because there's it's like comparing it to the running back in football. Just don't. There's not many guys there who are just that's the running back. That's the
mm,
guy that's gonna do gonna get me the points. Fantasy catcher is similar. There's only a few teams that got that guy, that workhorse that's gonna be back there, and he's gonna put up numbers. Catchers is just a really hard position, and once they go, they go, and
yeah,
there's no predicting when that's gonna happen. There could be a catcher could get drafted, second, third round, and then 3 or 4 catchers could get taken off the board as well.
yeah,
Or no one drafts a catcher till the 5th round, 6th round, and then they all go at that point.
yeah,
So whenever someone makes that move, it's everyone jumps on at that point. So all your drafting goes out the window, and it's like, well, I got to get a catcher now, or I don't have a catcher.
yeah. I tend to be that guy that tries to, even if it's a little early, draft a catcher because I don't want to miss the boat. I think that if you have that good guy behind the backstop, I think some of the other positions you can finagle in later rounds. But man, if you miss the boat on the catchers, you're gonna have a tough time. So
Unless you go find more Narvaez.
yeah, yeah. Well, I had a similar situation last year when Gary Sanchez got hurt. I picked up Christian Vasquez, worked just fine, helped me out a lot.
Yeah,
So you can get
yeah,
lucky like that, but you know,
yeah. I had no Omar Narvaez, and then I made a trade last year and got James McCann. So I actually had some decent catchers. Just you looked at the names, you were like, what the hell's this guy doing? But you look at the numbers, you're like, oh, he's all right.
yeah,
So that was good. I had a little bit of luck last year. It's a couple smart moves and really helped my team,
yeah. Well, you got to get a little bit of luck to keep moving on. For sure.
especially at the catcher position.
Yeah, for sure. So just some guys here. We actually have a little bit different of a list. I mean, I still got some guys on here. Obviously, you can't avoid all of them. But my number one guy, I always try to draft him, is Gary Sanchez. Obviously, he has his defensive trouble, but when you're considering fantasy, you want to go for offense first. I mean, you definitely don't want a guy that's going to be making errors all the time. But
No.
you take the good with the bad with with the offense versus defense. So he's definitely my first guy. 100%. If he's there, I'm drafting him. Right after that, one of your top guys, JT Realmuto. I'd say he's almost surely the best catcher in the league overall. Defense, offense, he's got it all. Like you said, it's a walk year for him, so he's gonna put up good numbers. Like you said with Girardi, that's a good point. With him having a catching manager that was a catcher will help him out a lot. I'm definitely looking to draft him if Gary Sanchez falls off, or if I can just get him. After that, I got Wilson Contreras. Wilson Contreras, another guy that obviously has his defensive issues, isn't perfect, but as far as offense goes, man, he can really mash the ball. He's really really good. So he's not usually a guy that I would. There's some guys that I just try to not avoid, but they don't catch my eye, and he's one of those guys that hasn't caught my eye. But lately, looking at his stats, I think I might try to get him this year. Another guy I'm looking at is Jorge Alfaro. Kind of little, I guess you could call him under the radar guy, but my assumption he's going to start. He's going to start quite a few games over there in Miami. He put up good stats last year. He was kind of a free agent in our league for a while. I picked him up, dropped him, picked him up, dropped him. He could never find a home in our fantasy league, but I expect him to put up good numbers. And if you fall that far in the draft, I think that Jorge Alfaro will do just fine. My next guy actually I got is Christian Vasquez, who, again, if you're falling in the draft a little bit and you go, oh boy, I need a catcher, he's definitely a guy to look at. He put up great offensive numbers last year. I picked him up late when Gary Sanchez got hurt, and the Yankees were already in the playoff position, so they weren't really rushing him back. So I was like, oh man, mad dash, I need a catcher, and he actually helped me win a few weeks in the playoffs. So I mean, he's definitely got a spot in my heart. A little bit. Maybe I'll draft him just based off that, even as a backup, he's a utility guy. So then for some sleepers, I mean, I've got some other names, but the sleepers I want to talk about, similar to you, is Danny Jansen. I know you talked him up a little bit last year. He obviously didn't quite have the year that we were expecting him to have, but he started hitting better as the year went on, and so it's definitely someone to watch. Some stats that a catcher you don't expect to put up like monstrous stats, but someone that could bat 260, 270 and hit some home runs for you. I mean, he could probably do that, be just fine. Next guy I want to talk about, I'm assuming he's not going to get as much playing time, but you never know with the White Sox lineup. But James McCann, you can never sleep on him as far as statistics. If he gets his playing time, he's going to do fine. He hit really well last year, especially in I believe the first half. So if he gets his playing time, he's going to do just fine. But like I said, with Grandal getting signed, I'm not so sure. So just keep an eye on him. Another sleeper that I want to talk about, probably almost a definition of a sleeper, Austin Romine for the Tigers. He's finally got his time to shine as a starter. So you don't know what you're really going to get out of him. I'm not expecting him to bat 300 and hit 30 home runs or anything like that for sure. But if you're following the draft and you go, oh man, there's like everyone's gone. Austin Romine's there. I'll draft him. He could probably bat 240, 250, probably hit you like 10, 15, a good year, 20 home runs. He's going to be a good backstop for the Tigers. I think he's going to do fine. Like I said, with the platoon roles with catchers on teams, is he going to get full playing time? We're yet to be seen, but he is definitely pegged to be the guy over there. And then finally, I want to talk about a guy that I always was high on, just based on how they projected him as a prospect. Travis d'Arnaud. He had success with the Rays as opposed to his Mets years, and he kind of bounced around. So the success could translate to this season if he gets his playing time, and he's another guy that you could watch that could put up some good fantasy numbers. And a lot of these guys too, you got to talk about have first base as their secondary position that you could always slot someone at first or put someone in utility. So if they're a decent hitter, they could always find a spot on your team, even if it's not the prime catching position. They could be your backup.
Yeah. Not just that, they could be trade bait. Someone has a catcher injury or missed out on catchers, you can use them to trade for a position of need. Or in our draft or our fantasy league, we could trade for draft picks. So that's always a big thing. It starts to get sent around, draft picks. So
yeah.
And a guy that I think we missed here, Sean Murphy, for the A's. That's a guy he's gonna have a good year. Another super lineup, high prospect guy. He's gonna have a really good year for the A's, I believe. So that's another guy to look at. But all in all, I mean, that's pretty much the catchers. There's a few here or there that we missed. I mean, like I said, combine our list together, and you pretty much got, you got pretty much everybody. I mean, yeah, I could easily put Sanchez on my list as well. I didn't want our list to be too much similar. So there's a few guys, same relievers. I could have had a few different guys on there, but I didn't want to have the same exact lists. But there's a lot of a lot of pitchers, catchers not so many. So you kind of got to jump on that catcher thing early, and make sure you get your solid backstop. Otherwise it could really bring down a team. Even though it's only one position, it's like this, second base, outfield. You can kind of find somebody at least do good for a couple of weeks. Catcher, it's like you're not going to find anybody, so you're just going to be stuck with nothing for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah, and that's a way you could lose stats like at bats and walks and just almost seemingly meaningless stats that you can't really control. But if you have a guy that's only starting 3-4 out of the 7 days, that's going to hurt your team. You're going to lose some stats consistently every week.
Yeah. And then he comes in and let's say he only plays 3 games. He makes an error one of those games. You're like, Jesus, this guy has done nothing but hurt me.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So it's definitely a position of need, and it turns a whole draft and a whole fantasy league, that catcher position.
Yeah.
And it's weird because that position has definitely dropped off the table in fantasy because years ago it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
And then like another year went by, you kind of went down a little bit, and then another year went by, went down, and then the next year was like just dropped completely off the table.
Yeah.
So
100%.
It's just a hard position, and it's frightening when you just picked like 3 picks ago, and then 7 catchers go off, and you're like, well.
Yeah. Well, now what?
Like, all right, I got the Royals backup catcher. Nice. That's all
Well, that's
right.
another,
Yeah.
that's another guy I got on my list I want to mention, Salvador Perez. Now that you mentioned the Royals, coming off an injury, I mean, I actually had him just out of my top 5. That's a guy I just wanted to throw a quick shout out to.
Yeah.
Kind of actually probably a little forgotten now that the Royals really all ain't all that good, So that's a guy to look at too.
Yeah.
But you don't want his backup. You don't want his backup.
No, let's back up. No, sure. So now he's your starter. No.
No, no.
I've seen teams, Dom, our buddy Dom, I've seen him start Martin Maldonado.
He was all about him last year. I remember
I
that.
think, yeah, he wasn't even on a team yet. He was in the minors, I think, or something crazy. He was on his team.
Yeah.
That's where his catching situation was at some point. So it happens. But you catch lightning in a bottle like you did with Vasquez last year, or I did with Omar Narvaez.
Mm.
Boy, they almost make you their favorite player.
Yeah. Yeah, really.
That's pretty much all I got for the catchers, and pitchers and catchers. That's pretty much all I got with them.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's guys we missed, and like we said, we didn't want to include all the top guys for the starters. It goes without saying to get those top guys. But I don't really have anyone that I want to throw a quick shout out to, anyone that I think I missed, other than, maybe catchers. I also got Buster Posey written down. I was always a big Buster Posey fan. But his stats have regressed over the years, and he's not going to be anywhere near one of my top picks,
Yeah, big time. He went down. I think I had him last year at some point in some sort of trade, and he doesn't, he spent 250, no home runs, no RBIs,
Yeah, that's the thing.
Once the
average starts going down for him, he never really did hit all that many home runs. So once the average goes down, he's really got nothing,
Yeah, especially at Giants out there in San Francisco. Not a great hitter's ballpark. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Next week, we'll go into some more of the infield, and those are some of your superstar guys, some of your team building blocks, where you got to hit on those guys early, and they can set your whole team up for success. One of those guys gets hurt, or 320 hitter, or 315 hitter is only a 280 hitter. Your whole team could be down the drain, and I've seen that. Personally, I've seen, not quite, the whole team gone, but I had a team one year where I had like 6 of the best players in baseball, and they all just couldn't quite do anything.
Yeah, couldn't put it together.
I mean, I had Harper and Chris Bryant and Jose Ramirez, and my team was ridiculous. Just couldn't quite put it together. Injuries and stuff like that. So, that's the kind of players that you need to hit on, especially, a good shortstop or a first baseman or something like that, where it's just going to be your team building block. So, next week we'll do that. The week after we'll do some outfielders, which is obviously another position where, it's such a deep position where you can get value out of just about anybody for a certain, couple stats or stat categories.
Yeah.
Should be fun. I'll go through some fantasy. We plan on having our fantasy draft for our league, hopefully, in the coming weeks. So that should be fun to go through our fantasy league or our fantasy draft. It's usually an offline draft. So, we all get together and have a draft party. So that should be fun. And, we'll do an episode after that draft, and we can kind of go over everybody's team and kind of see where we drafted and how we drafted and stuff like that. So that should be a good episode.
Yeah, for sure.
You got anything you want to add, Mike?
No. As far as all the players here and all that stuff, I got nothing more to add to this. I mean, I did want to make a little note, not unrelated to the actual list here, but I did want to make a note that we are recording, as we've said on other episodes, we record on Mondays, and we got some good news through baseball. I know that the proposal, the owners, it seemed like they agreed to put a proposal through for the season tomorrow. So when this episode goes live, we obviously don't know yet what the status of the season is. I know they're talking about salaries being a big hang-up possibly for the player union, but it seems pretty encouraging. It seems like there's an encouraging plan about an 80-some game season starting in July. And I just wanted you to know that if you listen to this episode, we don't have the information yet, whether we know what's going on with the season. So that might come next week's episode if we hear something. We can give a little update.
Sure. And to even go along with that, recording on Monday. So yesterday was Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to
Yep.
mothers out there. And even Saturday was a big event in baseball too. It was Tony Gwynn's would have been 60th birthday. So
Yeah.
it's a shame that we lost Tony Gwynn a few years ago because he's one of the greatest hitters of all time. So I just wanted to mention Tony Gwynn's his birthday passing, his 60th birthday.
Yeah, one of the best.
Yeah, definitely one of the best. And of course, like I said, wanted to wish all the mothers a belated happy Mother's Day. On top of all that, we do have our weekly trivia question. So,
All right.
like Mike just said, with baseball hopefully starting up soon, I thought it was a great chance to jump on the trivia question, which we posted, and that is, who has the most home runs on opening day?
It's a good one.
Yeah, since baseball is coming back soon, I figured, hey, why don't we do this? And the answer to that is it's actually a three-way tie.
I was going to
And
say.
the tie is between Frank Robinson, Ken Griffey
Okay.
Jr., and Adam Dunn.
I was going to say Adam Dunn.
It's a three-way tie, and they all have 8 home runs on opening day.
All right.
I'm not sure exactly, but I believe it's 2 or 3 people have 7. I think Babe Ruth had 7, of course.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But it's a three-way tie at the top with 8 home runs on opening day. Frank Robinson, Ken Griffey Jr., and Adam Dunn. And I'll never forget Adam Dunn tying that record. We were at our buddy's house watching, and he had a home run at Globe Life, second deck, opening day, when he was playing with the White Sox. And it was fantastic because I remember watching it, and he's my favorite player, so he's just the man. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's our trivia question for the week. And like I said, you've seen it posted on Twitter, you've seen it posted on Facebook, stuff like that. Next week, like I said, we'll do some more fantasy stuff. I'll have another trivia question for everybody, and hopefully we'll have an update on baseball.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Sounds good here. I mean, you got any final notes? Anything before we go, anything you want to mention?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
All right, well, we'll come at you guys next week with another fantasy episode. We'll talk about infielders. We'll go around numerically around the diamond again. First, second baseman, shortstops, third baseman, and then we'll move on to the outfielders in the next episode. So until then, you can follow me on Twitter at RealMikeLepre. You can follow me on Instagram at Mike Lepre.
And you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at FDubs10.
You can follow our official Screwball Twitter at ScrewballPod. You can follow us on Facebook at ScrewballPod, no E in Screw. And that's it from us, guys. We'll see you next week.
Yep, take care.